Good day to you and welcome back. A number of you have inquired about me doing a video about how do you start a type-in? How do you organize? How do you get a type-in going in your community? Well, it just so happens that in just a few days, this is Monday, so the coming Saturday, August 3rd, is a small type-in here in Albuquerque at the Ernie Pyle Library. This is kind of a special type-in. I'll explain why in a few minutes. But I wanted to also use this as an opportunity to kind of explain the organizational efforts I go through and sort of a little mental checklist I use when setting up a type-in. I hope you find this valuable. Stay tuned. So I'm sure some of you are asking yourselves, what is a type-in? Well, type-ins started around 2014 time period, I believe, in Philadelphia. The name type-in is kind of a reference to the 1960s cultural movements of like sit-ins and music festivals. But in this case, it involves typewriter enthusiasts who come together for a public typewriter meeting, and they invite the public. They bring their own typewriters, they invite other people to bring typewriters, and they just have a typewriter geek fest. Some type-ins are more activity related, like for instance beauty contests, who has the prettiest typewriter, or speed typing contests, that kind of thing. One of the fundamental things you need to start a type-in, first of all, is you need typewriters. You need a collection of typewriters. How many do you need? For a normal type-in, and what I mean by that is the upcoming type-in that we're having at the Ernie Pyle Library is not really a normal type-in. I'll explain why in a few minutes. But a normal type-in, you want at least a dozen typewriters, and then you want to have other typewriter enthusiasts also bringing theirs. So it's nice to have roughly 24 typewriters, if you can, ideally for a larger kind of public typewriter event. But you don't have to have that many. You can have a micro type-in, just a few people, whoever has typewriters in your area, come together for a public event. But the more typewriters, the better. So that's the first thing. Bring as many typewriters as you can. Obviously, it's easier to do this when you have people helping you. So one of the other issues is, how do you get in touch? How do you get in contact with the local typewriter community? There may be other collectors in your area, and you have to kind of find those connections, get to know those people, develop friendships, have your own private like typewriter social gatherings so you're familiar with each other, maybe help each other out with typewriter maintenance issues or whatever. So it helps to form your own local typewriter social movement or social group. It doesn't have to be formal. It could just be a couple of friends that come together. But having several people to help with a type-in is crucial. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have a small core group of people who are really important to me in helping me set up a type-in. Can you do a type-in on your own without any help? Theoretically, yes, but it's just a lot more easy and fun to have someone helping you do it, helping you set up. So you also have, if you have several typewriter collectors in your area, you might have a fellow collector who has a different emphasis on different kinds of machines than you do. And so what's nice about that is then you'll have a variety of machines. Maybe your friend across town likes more upright standard machines or electric machines or whatever, and you have a different emphasis. So having a variety of people helping you is important. And along with the idea of having a core group of local people to get together, form their own ad hoc little social circle, you want to be able to communicate effectively. So you can do this as simple as texting people. It doesn't have to be anything formal. Or you can kind of create like what we've done here in Albuquerque, the Albuquerque Typewriter Society. We have a Substack group, a page, kind of like a blog, and we notify people that are on the mailing list about upcoming events, and that helps us to spread the word about upcoming type-ins. So having communication within your group is important, but also you want to kind of communicate to the larger community around you about your type-in. Now, I've had some rather successful type-ins in the past, and they came about because of local media attention. A few years ago, we had a newspaper story about me and a typewriter community, and it resulted in a huge turnout at the subsequent type-in. Other times in that same venue, we've had very little turnout because we didn't go to the effort of spreading the word. So, barring you being able to get local media coverage of your event, which you don't always do, it's really helpful to spread the word yourself through social media. And this means that you might be a typewriter enthusiast who is really interested in the mechanical nature, the disconnected nature of typewriters from the internet, from computers and all the modern technology. But it also means you might have to force yourself to go in to learn social media skills enough to where you can communicate your upcoming type-ins. For instance, one platform, I'm not advocating it necessarily, but just one platform that's useful to many people is Facebook, for two reasons. Number one, there are typewriter groups on Facebook, meaning you sign up for a group, become a member, and then the best way to use Facebook in the context of groups is not to go into Facebook and look at the feed, because the feed is sort of the algorithm feeding you stuff that you may not want. What it is, you go into Facebook and go to your groups and just look at your groups, your typewriter, antique typewriter group or whatever it is. You could even start your own local typewriter group page on Facebook and just look at that, and then you can use Messenger and other communication tools to touch base with your fellow members. But also you can use events. You can schedule an event in Facebook and it will be distributed to the local community through Facebook. So that's one way you can do it. There's other avenues of internet communication also that you can use in your local community. And there are a number of there are newspapers oftentimes. They may not be traditional newspapers, but maybe more like independent newspapers. They might have a calendar, a community calendar, and you can put your event on there. But it's important to spread the word to the local community about your event. Otherwise, very few people show up. Well, I mentioned earlier it's important to have typewriters to bring to a type-in event. I want to talk a little bit about that. So you might have an assortment of typewriters in various states of repair. You might have some that work pretty good and others that are kind of problematic and trouble prone. You might also have typewriters that are really old and delicate. So I would say don't bring the really delicate machines to the type-in unless you have somebody to sit there and watch it to prevent some person from the public from inadvertently fiddling with it, banging on it, or breaking something. So machines that are too fragile, don't bring them. Also, machines that are too trouble-prone, don't bring them. You don't want people being frustrated with the operation of the typewriter. This means you kind of have a responsibility to have a core group of machines that you can consider reliable enough for public use. For that reason, I've actually accumulated probably more typewriters in my collection than I really need for my own personal use, mainly because of type-ins. And also, I tend to collect some machines that are common and seem to be reliable and pretty easy to service as for an amateur, such as Smith Corona 5 and 6 series portables. Those seem to be readily available here in the States, and they're rugged, usually rugged enough, fairly easy to work on. So those are good, reliable public typewriters. Also, don't discount the possibility of electric typewriters, because the public who goes into your event may not be an enthusiast like you are. They may not have the touch typing skills on a manual typewriter like you do, but an electric typewriter where it doesn't take any finger strength to operate, the public loves those typewriters. So don't discount electric typewriters or even electronic daisy wheel typewriters. So what do you bring to a type-in besides just the typewriters? Well, make sure there is adequate seating, like tables and chairs. And make sure there's enough room in the room. It's a big enough space for the number of machines you anticipate and the kind of crowd you anticipate. And therefore, you might want to get an inexpensive folding table and some folding chairs just to augment the venue if they don't have enough. So be prepared for that. Also, bring an extension cord and a plug strip in case somebody, either yourself or one of your friends or somebody from the public, brings an electric typewriter. And then also, you might want to print out some flyers about your little group. And also, I like to print out flyers that have contacts about commonly asked questions, like where can I get typewriter ribbons? So you might have a few links on the piece of paper of where you like to get typewriter ribbons online. If you're blessed enough to have a local typewriter repair shop in your community, like I am with John Lewis, have some contact information about that business. And any of your favorite blogs or YouTube channels, I wonder who that could be. Not just mine, but other YouTubers who focus on typewriters. Be sure to include links for that so that you have a little kind of a handout that can start enthusiasts, fledgling enthusiasts, into enjoying learning about typewriters, and also some of your favorite websites as well pertaining to typewriters and blogs. So that's important to do. Also, don't forget to bring the paper. So you can just bring a ream of office copy paper. That's fine, but I prefer to cut it in half. So you'll find a lot of times people will take a full sheet of paper, they'll type one sentence like the quick brown fox, and then it gets discarded. The next person comes to the machine, gets a fresh piece of paper. I like to cut the paper in half. I also I've created a little letterhead of our Albuquerque Typewriter Society on the half sheet of paper. And so I have packs of those in various colors of paper on all the tables. And so it kind of makes it a little more economical. People aren't wasting as much paper. And also, if you have somebody who can staff the front door, the entrance, have like an entrance table, have somebody there who is going to like hand out the little brochure about contact information about typewriters, but also hand them each a couple pieces of paper. Say, you can bring your piece of paper to various typewriters and try them out, so you can have a record of all the different machines you've typed on, not just grabbing a sheet of paper off the table, typing it, and then leaving it for somebody else to throw away later on. Encourage people to use the piece of paper on different machines. Since I mentioned having a table at the start, at the entrance where people can be greeted, also have a clipboard, a sign-up list for people to leave their email contact information, a name and email address, so you can create a database of contacts so you can let people know in the future about upcoming events. You can email out to this list of people who are interested in typewriter events. Hey, I have a future event coming up. We'd like to see you attend if you can. And also from this list, you can also try to find a core group of enthusiasts that are more likely to want to help out behind the scenes. And that's one of the important things about developing a list of contacts of people, is not just for the casually interested person, but to find people who are really enthusiastic, who want to become part of your little social circle. So then really the biggest issue with organizing a type-in, besides having a collection of typewriters in the first place, is where do you hold the type-in, the venue. I know the first time I held a type-in, it took me a while to find the venue, and I ended up using a local craft brewery who served food and drink. They had a meeting room, and they required me to guarantee at least $300 in food and drink sales. Otherwise, I'd have to pay them a certain amount. Luckily, we advertised the event in the local newspaper, and we had a really good turnout, and it turned out I didn't have to pay any money to the venue. But that is one way to do it if you want food and drink at your venue. But keep in mind, the problem, especially with drink, is people can spill a drink on a typewriter, and you don't want that to happen. So I found later on We have several stationery stores, specifically Penny Smith's Papers was a very enthusiastic partner who had a breezeway in front of their shop, kind of covered breezeway, and when the weather was nicer, it was a good place to have a type-in. They provided some of the tables and chairs, we provided others, and then it also provided them an opportunity to get a few sales from the typewriter people that would come and try out the typewriters. So that's another option, is to partner with a kind of a business who's enthusiastic about typewriters or is related somewhat to writing, whether it's a stationery store or whatever. But I found the most useful venues are going to be public libraries. If you have a public library with a meeting room, there's usually a calendar of events and you can schedule the meeting room for your venue. And I find obviously weekends, Saturdays or Sundays, work best for type-ins. But you'll also find a lot of those library meeting rooms might be filled up. The calendar might be filled up. So in my case, I've been trying to organize an October 2024 type-in. And I had to go to a new library that I've never been before for one of these venues, just because the libraries that we normally have been using, their calendars all full, the meeting rooms are all full on weekends. Go and contact the staff people at your library, talk to them in person, tell them who you are, tell them what a type-in is, maybe have a little handout or brochure you've printed up. Tell them this is a public event. We have typewriters. It's sort of literacy related. We're encouraging literacy and writing through typewriters. We're going to have a public meeting. We'd like to have you support us if you can. Help us out with a meeting room. Several of the libraries here in town have been so nice as to create their own basically color brochure with graphics, pictures, text, and they put that on the calendar. So when a person clicks on the calendar, it comes up with a blurb, a one-page blurb describing the event. You can help them out with the words and with the photos if you need to, so they can get that graphic on their calendar and they can use that repeatedly over and over as you use the library venue over time. So I found libraries to be a very convenient place to do type-ins because it's obviously literary adjacent, right, to writing. These are some ideas for the venue of how to find a place to have a type-in. And once you figure out, oh, there's other alternatives besides just bars and restaurants, which can be troublesome because they want revenue from food and drink sales, and your typewriter event may not be compatible with that. Community centers, libraries are a really good place to start. So our upcoming type-in on August 3rd is going to be held at the Ernie Pyle Library here in Albuquerque. The library is named after the famed war reporter Ernie Pyle, who died in World War II. The site of the library is Pyle's former home that he lived with his wife in Albuquerque. So he was born on August 3rd, 1900 in rural Indiana. He died April 18th, 1945 in the campaign of Okinawa, the battle for Okinawa. He was killed as a war reporter. So he worked from 1935 to about 1941 for the Scripps Howard service as a roving human interest reporter, and he was probably the most widely read column in the nation's newspapers at that time. So in 1940, he bought his home in Albuquerque, and in 1942, he covered the North Africa campaign. My dad was in that campaign also. Ernie Pyle lived with the troops. There is a book about his writings of that time. He also covered the Italian campaign, as did my dad. And then he went up and covered the Normandy landings. And then in September 1944, he returned to the United States to recuperate from combat stress. But in January 1945, he was asked to go cover the Asia-Pacific War, which he reluctantly agreed to. And again, he was killed during the Battle of Okinawa in April 18th. So he had this very common man's perspective. And that's why he was so popular as a columnist, and he enjoyed traveling and writing about the people he met. So he also used portable typewriters during his career. There's a Remington portable in the library itself in a display case, and I'm going to be bringing my Remington portable number 2, which is in working shape. I'll be bringing also the Corona 3, the Royal Model O, the Royal Varsity, and the Underwood portable, and also I'm going to bring an Underwood 5, just because it's not a portable per se, but it was from the same era, pre-war. That's where our typing is going to be, in the Ernie Pyle Library. It's going to be a small venue, 5 or 6 typewriters. It's a very small venue because it's his former house, maybe less than 1,500 square feet. But again, I hope this gave you some encouraging thoughts about conducting your own type-in your community. It's kind of nerve-wracking when you first put on your first type-in. You don't know what to expect, but after you do 1 or 2 of them, it gets to be second nature, and you realize that the typewriters themselves sell themselves in the sense of making it easy for people to enjoy using them. People are enthusiastic about using these mechanical marvels from a previous age. I wish you the very best in your creative pursuits, and as always, have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.